Have you ever had someone ask you a question that felt off? Not rude, not aggressive, but something in your gut whispered, "This isn't innocent." That's because not all manipulation looks like manipulation. Sometimes it wears a smile. Sometimes it hides behind a question. And when it comes to people who lie or deceive, their most dangerous weapon isn't always the lie itself. It's what they do before the lie, how they gently pull at your trust, loosen the foundation beneath your feet and make you question what you once knew for sure. You see, trust is sacred. It's the invisible glue that holds families, friendships, and even society together. And when someone breaks that trust, not through some big betrayal but through small calculated moments, it doesn't just hurt. It disorients you. You start asking yourself, did I overreact? Maybe I misunderstood. Am I the problem? That's how they win. Because once you stop trusting yourself, you become easy to control. And here's the scariest part. The most effective manipulators don't raise their voices or make bold threats. They simply ask questions. Questions that sound reasonable, even caring. But underneath, they're designed to confuse you, twist the truth, and chip away at your confidence. In today's video, we're going to expose 5 subtle but dangerous questions that manipulative people use to gain control, without you even realizing it. Some of these might sound familiar. You might hear them from a boss, a partner, even a friend. And if you've ever walked away from a conversation feeling uneasy, like something wasn't quite right, but you couldn't explain why, this video will give you the clarity you've been searching for. But this isn't just about spotting manipulation. It's about building a deeper kind of strength, the kind that Stoic philosophers talked about centuries ago. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake, I will gladly change, but I must see the truth." That's what we're aiming for here. Not paranoia, not revenge, but clarity, awareness, power rooted in truth. Because when you understand how these subtle tactics work, you don't need to raise your voice. You don't need to play games, you simply see things for what they are, and you respond from a place of calm, grounded strength. So let me ask you, have you ever had someone twist your words in a way that made you doubt your memory? Has anyone ever made you feel guilty for having boundaries, or worse, made you apologize for being honest? If so, you're not alone, and it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility to learn, to grow, and to protect the most important kind of trust there is, the trust you have in yourself. This episode is for anyone who's tired of being pulled into emotional games, for those who want to stop reacting out of confusion and start responding with wisdom. We're going to walk through each of these 5 manipulative questions, break down how they work, and, more importantly, how to neutralize their power with calm, clear insight. Because here's the truth. Once you can name the tactic, it loses its grip. Let's build that clarity. Let's reclaim your peace of mind. And let's start right now. Manipulative. Question 1. Don't you trust me? Let's talk about a question that sounds innocent, but cuts deep. Don't you trust me? Now, at first glance, that question sounds fair, even sweet. It seems like someone is just asking for reassurance, maybe trying to connect. But look a little closer, and you'll realize it's often not a request. It's a trap. Here's how it works. Imagine you notice something's off. Maybe their story keeps changing. Maybe their actions don't match their words. So you bring it up, carefully, respectfully. And instead of addressing your concern, they look at you, maybe with a hurt expression, and say, "Don't you trust me?" In that moment, the focus silently shifts. It's no longer about their sketchy behavior. Now suddenly you're on trial. You're the one being questioned. See what just happened? They've taken your healthy doubt, a sign that you're paying attention, and turned it into an accusation. And worse, they've wrapped it in guilt. This is what I call the emotional guilt trap. It's subtle, it's powerful, and it's designed to make you feel like the bad guy for simply trusting your instincts. Now let me be clear, trust is important. But real trust doesn't come from emotional pressure. It's earned, over time, through consistency, honesty, and clarity. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said something powerful. If someone succeeds in provoking you, Realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. What does that mean here? It means when someone manipulates your emotions, it only works if you hand over the keys. If you let guilt override your judgment. And this is where Stoicism becomes your greatest shield. Because Stoicism teaches us to honor logic over emotion, especially in moments of tension. So the next time someone throws this question at you, "Don't you trust me?" I want you to pause, not with anger, not with fear, but with calm clarity. Ask yourself, is this question coming from a place of genuine connection, or is it being used to avoid accountability? Am I being asked to ignore a real concern, just to protect someone else's feelings? Because here's the truth. Doubt isn't disrespect. Curiosity isn't betrayal. And protecting your peace is not an act of war. We often feel pressured to prove that we're good people by staying quiet, going along, giving the benefit of the doubt, even when things don't feel right. But the Stoics would remind us, you are not obligated to trust blindly. You are only obligated to live in accordance with reason. Let me give you a simple example. Say your friend asks to borrow money, again. Last time they promised to pay you back in a week, but that was 3 months ago, no word. So when they ask again and you hesitate, what do they say? Don't you trust me? Now think, is that question meant to open a conversation or to end it? In most cases, it's meant to shut you down, to make you feel bad for having boundaries. But here's the Stoic approach. You don't attack, you don't accuse. You calmly respond with something like, I believe in giving trust where it's been earned. Let's be honest with each other. That's it. No drama, no guilt, just truth. Because protecting your trust doesn't mean you're cold or unforgiving. It means you respect yourself enough not to abandon your own wisdom. So what's the takeaway? Recognize the pattern. Don't you trust me is often used to distract and disarm. Honor your intuition. Your instincts are not irrational. They're signals. Listen to them. Respond with calm truth. Use reason. Don't get pulled into emotional games, and most importantly, never let someone use guilt as a shortcut to your trust. Trust is not a gift. It's a bridge. And bridges don't appear out of thin air. They're built, one solid step at a time. So, the next time you hear, "Don't you trust me?" don't rush to answer. Don't rush to defend yourself. Just breathe, reflect, and remember, true strength is not in proving your loyalty. It's in standing in your clarity. Manipulative question 2. Why would I lie? Let's move to the second manipulative question that sounds so simple, yet disarms so many of us. Why would I lie? Now, on the surface, that sounds like a logical defense, right? But let's break it down. Because this question isn't just about logic. It's about misdirection. When someone says, "Why would I lie?" they're not offering proof. They're just throwing the burden of guilt back onto you for even daring to question them. It's a way to make you feel irrational, even paranoid, for following your instincts. And instead of answering your concern directly, they challenge your right to ask the question in the first place. Let me show you how this plays out in real life. Picture this. You're buying insurance, home, car, maybe even life insurance. The agent sits across from you, polished and persuasive. They speak with confidence, warmth, maybe even throw in a personal story to seem relatable. And when you ask for clarification, maybe something in the fine print doesn't make sense. They smile and say, "Come on, why would I lie?" Now pause. That statement sounds reasonable. It sounds like honesty. But if you look closer, there's no new information, no clarification, no facts, just pressure, just a subtle suggestion that you're the one creating a problem by not simply going along. That's the genius and the danger of this tactic. It bypasses truth and replaces it with reputation. It appeals to how trustworthy they've seemed, not to what's verifiably true right now. But here's the thing. Reputation is not proof, charm is not character, and logic without evidence is just noise. Let's bring in some Stoic insight. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius once wrote, If it's not right, don't do it. If it's not true, don't say it. In Stoicism, truth is not based on how persuasive someone is. It's based on what can be observed, tested, and confirmed in the present moment. The Stoics remind us to stay grounded. Don't get swept up in appearances or emotional persuasion. Instead, ask yourself, can I verify this claim? Am I being asked to accept something without clarity, just because it sounds convenient? If this were a stranger with no reputation, would I believe it just as easily? Because often, when someone says, "Why would I lie?" they're counting on the fact that you don't want to seem rude. You don't want to be that person who doubts others. You want to believe the best. But Stoicism teaches a different kind of strength. Believe in truth, not personality. Trust, in evidence, not emotion. Let's go deeper. This phrase, "Why would I lie?" also triggers a kind of mental shortcut. Psychologists call it a cognitive deflection. It forces your brain to answer the wrong question. Instead of staying focused on whether what they said is accurate, now you're asking yourself, yeah, why would they lie? It's like a magician snapping their fingers to pull your attention away from the sleight of hand. The illusion works because you stop looking where the truth actually is. But when you're grounded in Stoic awareness, you don't chase the distraction. You stay calm. You stay present. You look at what's actually happening, not what someone wants you to feel. Here's a simple Stoic test you can use anytime. Is this person offering facts, or are they offering feelings? Is this answer designed to explain or to dismiss? If it's not clear, it's not trustworthy. And trust, real trust, isn't something you owe to anyone just because they ask for it. Let me put it this way. If someone truly has nothing to hide, they won't be offended by your questions. They'll welcome them, because clarity protects you both. So what can we do when we hear this question? Let's say someone tells you something important, and when you ask for more details, they throw out, "Why would I lie?" Here's a grounded, Stoic-inspired response. I'm not accusing you of anything, I just want to understand clearly. If everything checks out, then great. Simple, honest, calm. That's the power of reasoned detachment. You're not getting emotional. You're not playing defense. You're staying in your lane, focused on clarity, not approval. Because that's what true emotional strength looks like. So here's the big takeaway. Why would I lie? Is not an answer. It's a deflection. Don't trade your instinct for someone else's confidence. Let truth be tested. Let questions breathe. And never feel guilty for seeking clarity. You are not difficult. You are not disrespectful. You are simply choosing to see the world as it is, not as someone wants you to believe it is. That's the Stoic path. That's how you build trust, not in others blindly, but in your own ability to discern. And that kind of trust, no one can take it from you. Manipulative question 3. Can you keep a secret? Here's a question that feels warm, almost flattering. Can you keep a secret? We've all heard it. Maybe from a friend, a coworker, even a partner. And let's be honest, when someone says that to you, it sparks something deep inside. It makes you feel trusted, important, like you've been invited into a private room that only a select few ever see. But beware, because sometimes this question isn't about connection. It's about control. Let's look at what's really going on. At face value, the "can you keep a secret" seems innocent, even kind. It suggests closeness, loyalty, a shared bond. But in many cases, it's not about building trust. It's about buying your silence. Let me tell you a story. Rachel worked in a high-pressure office. She was new, still learning the ropes. One afternoon, her manager pulled her aside and said, "Look, I'm going to tell you something, but it stays between us. Can you keep a secret?" Feeling nervous but also flattered, Rachel nodded yes. And what followed was a confession of unethical behavior. Her manager admitted to falsifying reports to make the department look better. And now, Rachel was stuck. She hadn't just been told a secret. She'd been enlisted into silence. This is what I call false intimacy, when someone pretends they're being vulnerable with you, but what they're really doing is creating a silent contract. Now that you know this, you're part of it, you owe me loyalty. But here's the problem. Not all loyalty is noble. The Stoics understood this well. Seneca once wrote, "Loyalty to what is right must override loyalty to any person." And that's a lesson more of us need to hold on to, especially in a world where manipulation is often dressed up as trust. When someone says, "Can you keep a secret?" you need to pause. Ask yourself, is this a secret that protects someone's dignity or hides someone's wrongdoing? Am I being pulled into an alliance I didn't ask for? Because there's a big difference between protecting someone's privacy and protecting their deception. And let's be honest, many of us have been caught in situations like this. Maybe a friend confesses something shady they did to someone else and expects you to cover for them. Maybe a coworker spills insider info and wants your silence, not for your sake, but for theirs. And in those moments, it feels hard to say no. You worry you'll seem disloyal, cold, or worse, like a traitor. But here's where Stoic wisdom steps in. The Stoics taught that virtue is the only true good, that your peace of mind, your moral compass, and your integrity must come before comfort, before convenience, even before relationships. You are not here to be someone's secret keeper. You are here to live in alignment with truth. Think about it. When someone asks, "Can you keep a secret?" and that secret involves harming others, breaking rules, or violating your values, that's not trust, that's manipulation. And the longer you keep that secret, the more tangled you become in someone else's wrongdoing. You become not just a bystander, but a silent participant. Now, I'm not saying you should broadcast every private conversation to the world. Of course, there's value in discretion. Some secrets are shared in love, in healing, in safety. But if a secret feels heavy on your chest, if it makes you question your ethics, if it asks you to lie by omission, then it's not a secret worth keeping. Here's a Stoic question to carry with you. Does this secret align with the kind of person I'm trying to be? Because your integrity isn't built in loud public moments. It's built in small private decisions, like the one you face when someone says, "Can you keep a secret?" So what's the takeaway? Can you keep a secret? Isn't always about trust. It can be about control. Don't confuse false intimacy with genuine connection. Loyalty must align with your values, not just with the person asking. And when in doubt, you can respond with grace and strength. Something like, "I respect your privacy, but if this involves something unethical or harmful, I can't agree to silence without understanding what's at stake." That's not betrayal. That's boundaried wisdom. Because the truth is, you weren't put on this earth to keep other people's shadows hidden. You're here to live in the light, clear, honest, and free. So the next time someone leans in and says, "Can you keep a secret?" pause, breathe, and remember, your silence is a choice. Make sure it's one you can live with. Manipulative question 4. Who told you that? Let's move to one of the most subtle but deceptive manipulation tactics of all. The question that sounds curious, but is really controlling. Who told you that? Now this might seem like a reasonable question. On the surface, it looks like someone is just asking for clarity. But dig deeper and you'll realize it's often not about truth. It's about control. Here's how it works. You bring up a concern, maybe something you heard, saw, or discovered on your own. Instead of responding to the issue directly, the person you're confronting leans in and asks, "Who told you that?" Sounds simple, right? But look at what just happened. Instead of focusing on whether the information is true, they've redirected your attention to where it came from. And just like that, you're no longer talking about the facts. You're talking about loyalty. This is what I call control through deflection. The moment you hear "who told you that?" in a defensive tone, what you're really being asked is, whose side are you on? Should you even be allowed to know this? And that shift from the issue itself to the source of the issue is intentional. It's designed to make you second-guess not just what you heard, but whether you even had the right to ask in the first place. Let's take a real-world example. You might remember the case of Lance Armstrong, an athlete once celebrated as a hero. When doping allegations came to light, instead of addressing the accusations, what did he do? He attacked the sources. Journalists, former teammates, anyone who spoke up. He redirected attention away from the actual truth and instead created a war over who was trustworthy enough to speak. It worked for a while, because most people aren't trained to spot that kind of deflection, but the Stoics were. They understood that truth stands on its own. It doesn't require secrecy. It doesn't depend on status or popularity. It either is or it isn't. Epictetus. Put it plainly, it is not what others say, but whether it is right that should concern you. In other words, don't get lost in the drama of who said what. Ask instead, is it true? Because when someone asks, who told you that, in a defensive tone, what they're really trying to do is shift the pressure back onto you. To make you feel disloyal for knowing something. To make you protect their image rather than confront their behavior. But here's what the Stoics would tell you. Truth doesn't belong to anyone. It belongs to reason. And reason doesn't need permission to ask questions. Let's say you work in a company, and you hear from a colleague that something shady is going on with the budget. You raise the issue to your manager, and their first response is, who told you that? What's the right response? Stay grounded. Stay clear. You could say, let's set aside where it came from and focus on whether it's true. That's what matters most. Because that's the Stoic way. Cut through the noise and go straight to the core. Let's break down why this tactic is so dangerous. It turns moral clarity into a loyalty conflict. You're no longer seen as someone asking a fair question. You're seen as someone betraying a relationship. It shifts the burden away from the person being confronted. Instead of having to defend their actions, they now force you to defend your source. It isolates and silences others. If they can identify and punish whoever spoke up, they send a message. Next time, keep your mouth shut. That's not leadership, that's fear. And the Stoics would remind you, fear has no place in truth. Seneca once said, he who does wrong is more wretched than he who suffers it. When someone lashes out at the truth, they're not strong. They're afraid of being seen. So the next time you hear, who told you that? Pause. Ask yourself, am I being redirected away from the real issue? Is this about truth or image? Am I being asked to betray my values for someone else's comfort? And then return, gently but firmly, to the point. Let's focus on what's true. That's what I care about. That's not defiance, that's clarity. That's moral courage, the kind the Stoics believed was more valuable than reputation, more enduring than power. So here's the takeaway. Who told you that is often a smokescreen. The source of truth matters less than the truth itself. Don't be pulled into a loyalty test when the real test is about integrity. Because at the end of the day, the Stoics didn't ask, who said it? They asked, is it right? And that's a question worth living by. Manipulative question 5. Don't you remember? Now this last one might hit closer to home than you expect. It's a phrase so common, so subtle, that you might not even recognize it as manipulation. Don't you remember? Those 3 words can make you freeze. Not because they're loud, but because they make you question the very thing you need. To navigate life, your own memory. Here's how it works. You raise a concern. Maybe it's about something that was said, something that didn't sit right. You're calm, you're sure. And then the person across from you tilts their head and says, don't you remember? We already talked about this. That's not what happened. You're misremembering. And suddenly, you're not sure anymore. Did it happen the way you thought? Did you misunderstand? Are you the problem? This, my friend, is gaslighting. And it is one of the most dangerous forms of manipulation. Not because it breaks you in one loud moment, but because it erodes your self-trust, slowly, quietly, from the inside out. Gaslighting makes you dependent, not on facts, but on their version of reality. It makes you second-guess your instincts, your memory, even your sanity. Let's look at a real-life example. Imagine you're in a relationship and you bring up something troubling. Maybe it was a rude comment your partner made at dinner last week, but instead of owning it, they say, "What? I never said that. You're imagining things. You're sure it happened. You felt it in the moment, but now you're being told it never existed." You start to question yourself. Maybe you misheard. Maybe you are being too sensitive, so you drop it. But this doesn't just happen once. It becomes a pattern. And with each repetition, your confidence gets a little weaker, until one day you're no longer sure what's true unless they confirm it. This is what gaslighting does. And the Stoics? They saw this coming centuries ago. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." In other words, the anchor is within you, not in anyone else's version of your story. So how do we fight back against this manipulation? Not with aggression, not with shouting, but with clarity, grounding, evidence, reflection. Here's how. Start keeping written records. This isn't paranoia, it's protection. Notes, journals, even brief voice memos. When someone tries to rewrite history, you'll have something solid to hold on to. Trust the emotional signal. Even if you don't have a recording of what happened, pay attention to how it made you feel. Gaslighting often comes with a deep sense of disorientation. That's not weakness. It's your intuition waving a red flag. Ask calm, but direct. Questions. When someone says, "Don't you remember?" reply with, "I do remember it differently, and I want to understand why we see this so differently." This puts the focus back on the truth, not the power dynamic. Reflect regularly. Stoicism teaches us the practice of daily reflection, writing down what we experienced, how we responded, and what we believe to be true. This isn't just philosophy, it's a defense system. Because here's the truth. Gaslighting only works when you let someone else become the author of your story. But when you stay rooted in your own values, your own memory, your own mind, you cannot be moved. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like your memories were slowly being rewritten by someone else's words? Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling more confused than when you started? Have you ever apologized for something you were never even sure you did? If so, you're not crazy. You're not weak. You were just caught in a very subtle, very toxic power play. But you can break free. Because what the Stoics remind us is this. Your peace doesn't come from someone else's approval. It comes from your commitment to truth, within and without. And truth doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to argue, it simply needs to be remembered. So here's your takeaway. "Don't you remember?" is not always a question. Sometimes it's a weapon. Use your mind as your anchor. Record, reflect, stay grounded. Reclaim your reality. Don't let it be rewritten by anyone else. Because at the end of the day, the moment you stop outsourcing your truth is the moment you start living in freedom. So let's take a breath together. We've just walked through 5 deceptively simple questions that can quietly sabotage your peace of mind. Not with yelling, not with threats, but with subtle, clever language designed to confuse, disarm, and control. Questions like, "Don't you trust me? Why would I lie? Can you keep a secret? Who told you that? Don't you remember?" Each one sounds harmless, maybe even caring. But in the hands of someone manipulative, these aren't real questions. They're emotional traps. They are tools used to twist your perception, so you doubt what you saw, question what you heard, and eventually forget how to trust yourself. But now you know better. And that's where your power begins, because the greatest form of power doesn't come from controlling others. It comes from refusing to be controlled. It's the power to stay rooted and calm when someone tries to provoke chaos. It's the strength to choose clarity over confusion, silence over drama, truth over image. Let's get one thing clear. You don't need to confront every manipulator with a dramatic speech. You don't have to scream, accuse, or turn every situation into a battle. In fact, Stoicism teaches us the opposite. The Stoics believed that clarity doesn't shout. It doesn't demand. It simply stands firm, like a mountain in the storm. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your own judgment about it." That means people may try to shake you. They may use lies, guilt, or emotional pressure. But the moment you stop giving their words power over your mind, the moment you stop letting their questions override your inner compass, they lose control. So what does power look like in practice? It looks like awareness over confusion, seeing the tactic as it's being used, and refusing to fall for it. Calm over reaction, not getting pulled into emotional games, not defending yourself just because someone else is uncomfortable with the truth. Truth over performance, staying anchored in what's real, even when others are trying to twist the narrative. You don't have to be loud to be powerful. You don't have to be aggressive to be firm. All you need is the courage to think clearly, act wisely, and walk away when your peace is being poisoned. Let me ask you, have you ever kept quiet just to avoid conflict, even though you knew something wasn't right? Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling smaller, more confused, more disconnected from yourself? You're not alone. We live in a world that often rewards performance over truth, but the Stoics offer us a different path, a quieter path, a stronger path. They teach us that you don't need to control others to feel safe. You only need to control your response. You don't have to expose every liar. Just stop giving them access to your mind. Because when you stop explaining yourself to people who twist your words, when you stop internalizing guilt that was never yours to carry, when you start listening to your own voice even when it shakes, that's when you reclaim your power. So the next time someone asks one of those loaded questions, pause, breathe, and remember, you are not here to win arguments. You are here to live in truth. Your calm is your strength. Your clarity is your shield. And your boundaries, they are the gatekeepers of your peace. So go forward today with your eyes open, your heart grounded, and your mind protected. You know the traps now. You know the tactics. And more importantly, you know who you are. Hold that line and walk forward in truth. If this video gave you something to think about, if it helped you see things a little more clearly, then I invite you to stay on this path with me. This channel is all about building inner strength, calm clarity, and unshakable self-trust. One insight at a time. So if that's a journey you want to keep walking, hit that subscribe button and let's keep learning together. And if you've ever felt alone in dealing with manipulation or emotional traps, just know, you're not alone. You're wiser than you think. You're stronger than you know. And every step you take toward truth is a step back to yourself. Thank you for spending your time here. Take care of your mind. Stand firm in what you know is right. And as always, stay grounded. Stay free. See you in the next one.